Nonprofit and philanthropic leaders devote their lives to the service of others, but sometimes they need a little help. Kristine Michie has been deep in the work and the play of helping changemakers grow their impact for decades. So whether you're ladling soup at a local shelter or attending a UN peace conference, you need to find the balance between the heavy work and a light touch so you don't burn out. And Kristine believes play is at the center of that. Welcome to the PlayFull Podcast, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the PlayFull Podcast. We are bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world. I'm Kristine Michie, and I'm here today with Brian Schaefer, who is, this is one of those special episodes where it's someone I've known for a really long time. Brian, welcome to the podcast. Brian is an author, several things, but we're going to mostly talk today about his role as a writer and author. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here and to be in conversation with you in this capacity. It's really, really exciting after all these years.
So good. Yeah, Brian and I first met each other, I don't even remember the decade, but we were working at a performing arts program at the University of California, San Diego, UCSD. And I was in a fundraising role, and Brian was in what would you call that, kind of like a production role?
Yeah,
you were
I just feel like
you were in charge of.
I was the program manager for our presenting arts program, and so we would bring in, a full season of performing artists, speakers, authors, filmmakers, and I helped arrange the artist visits to campus and the community and student engagement, and would also do Q&As with the authors and just kind of boost the ability to kind of like go deeper into their work, to give them the opportunity and an outlet to talk about what they did and to help them feel welcome on campus.
Yeah. It was great. It's a really neat intersection where kind of community and campus came together. And Brian, you were the first person I ever really learned about green rooms and green room etiquette and idiosyncrasies from. Because in The Writer, a lot of the performers had certain things they wanted. And of course, there's like lots of stories in the world about what certain groups and bands and performers want in the green room. But I remember that was part of what you had to make happen.
Well, I had a very steep learning curve in figuring out how to negotiate the green room. That was not initially something that I was comfortable with. So I also learned a lot during that time, and glad that I was helpful and able to impart whatever I gleaned.
Love it. All right, I'm going to bring people up to the present then. We're here to talk today. I'm going to hold it up because we have a YouTube channel for the PlayFull Podcast as well as the audio. So here's a copy of Brian's book, Town and Country, and I've got some of my Post-its on here from places and passages that just enchanted me in the book. And tell us, Brian, a little bit about how you went from what we just talked about, that work and work prior, through some work as a journalist, and you've always been a writer, to creative writing and bringing out a novel, which you guys, this is a part of our how-to series. So you may not be 100% sure that you're going to be able to write a novel after this conversation, but I think Brian's going to share some of his own how-to. How did he write a novel, and what did he learn in the process that could be interesting for some of the social justice people in our audience who have maybe a book inside of them, whether it's a nonfiction book or a creative piece of fiction?
Yeah, I think one of the unique and maybe not so unique parts of my story, and something that may be applicable to a lot of people out there, is just that I never intended or set out to write a novel or to be a novelist. It was a kind of unexpected progression of all the different things that I was passionate about and that I was interested in. And I just kept following them to, the next place, not entirely sure where it was taking me. And it ended up taking me to creative writing. But it does go back to our time at UCSD. It goes back to the performing arts. I entered college really unsure what I wanted to do professionally, and I fell in love with dance. And I had always been interested in the performing arts, but certainly never imagined myself going professionally into dance or having anything to do with it as an art form. But I stumbled into classes, I fell in love with it, and I ended up staying a fifth year and getting a second major in dance. And so I was a dance and communication major. And it was that experience that actually helped me get the job at the university's performing arts presenting program where we worked together. And so I came with this dance background, but I decided that I wasn't interested in performance. I was interested in helping support dance companies, support artists, and helping to bring that to audiences. And it was through my role as the program manager that I started conducting these Q&As, and I would moderate post-show conversations, and I would write articles for our performance magazine. And I loved that process. At the same time, I started writing dance criticism in San Diego because I was plugged into the dance community and really passionate about supporting it. And so I would find outlets, whether it be, an online news publication or even just my own blog, to write about dance. Then when I left the university, I got a year-long fellowship in Tel Aviv. So I moved there. It was a leadership program, but it was very self-directed, and I used that time to immerse myself in the Israeli dance scene, both contemporary and traditional, and also started used it as an opportunity to further explore the craft of writing. That led me to a workshop in creative writing through a university there. And I ended up staying an additional 2 years to get a master's in creative writing at Bar-Ilan University. That's when I, for the first time, started writing fiction, writing short stories, writing a novella for my thesis. And because I needed a job to support myself, I ended up working as a copy editor for Haaretz, which is Israel's oldest newspaper. And so suddenly I'm writing fiction, I'm writing journalism, but it all stems back from the fact that I love dance, took a leap of faith to become, to get a dance major, and follow that all the way to Israel and to creative writing and to journalism. So it was not a path that I ever could have intentionally set out for myself, but somehow in following each of those steps, that's where I ended up.
It strikes me that, I always want to make sure I ask the guests about play and playfulness. Having not spent time, in dance and physical performance art, either as a performer or even very close to it, how playful is there play inherent in the dance world? Is it playful to dance?
It can be. There's so many different facets of the dance world, and there are aspects of it that are quite rigid and disciplined. And maybe you think of ballet, which does have much more of a structure. And then there's contemporary dance, there's performance art, there's dance that in the generation of movement, there is absolutely a sense of play. And there's choreographers and artists who are interested in harnessing playfulness and ensuring that their dancers maintain that sense of joy and freedom when they're on stage. And so, there's a wide spectrum of dance. And so it's certainly a part of it, and as like any art form, it comes up against commerce, and it comes up against the need to book performances and to work with presenters. And as we both know, we saw the business side of it behind the scenes, where we're dealing with contracts and we're dealing with agents, and sometimes that can really take a sense of play away from it. But once all that is done, I was always struck when the artists came to campus, and especially when they're engaging with students, that the sense of play returns when they're on stage, and particularly, I would say, in the studio. The studio is really like the laboratory for play. And so when they're teaching a master class, when they're introducing students to like the new possibilities of how you can think about movement and how you can connect yourself to whatever a choreographer and artist is giving you, those are the moments where you really, I mean, some of my favorite moments were taking the master classes of the artists that we brought to campus, where, I was wearing my professional hat, And I had responsibilities to ensure that, the performance went well and the engagement went well. But for that 90 minutes when we were doing a master class, I could put that aside. I could take off my shoes. I could be barefoot on the floor. I could roll around. I could jump. I could take in whatever information they were giving me, and I could play as part of my job. And that was definitely one of the highlights of working in that role.
I love it. So would would it be fair to say, cause I'm gonna see if I'm gonna try a metaphor here. As a writer and a novelist in this case, is there any metaphor here to like that you, the choreography of language on a page, like dancers on a stage? Did some of that come into your writing, and does it infuse your writing?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I were to draw some sort of parallel between them, I think it would be the sense of maybe rhythm that you try and find in your body and in your language. I do write with a sense of how I want the words to sound and how I want the feeling of the sentence to unfold. And there's an intuitive sense of like, well, what feels right like in my fingers, as I'm writing it, what sounds right as I'm speaking it out loud. And that I think is very much connected to any artist who has a sense of like, does this feel right in my body? And whether that is literal choreography or whether that is music that you're writing, poetry that you're composing. I think you do
Yes.
have a visceral sense of, does this feel right in my
Yes.
body, the story as it's unfolding, or even on a sentence by sentence level. And I would also say one of the things that I learned a lot from dance, especially when I was working with choreographers, when that moment, before I moved into the arts presenting realm, but was performing for local San Diego dance companies, when we would create a dance, you would generate movement as much as you could, and you would fiddle with it and you would play around and then you would shape it. And I think that has largely translated into the way that I write, which is I try and be very free in the initial material that I put out there, that I generate. I try not to be so precious in the specific words or how long the sentence is, or even that sense of rhythm. I try not to care about word count. I try not to care about, whether something whether I'm moving in the right direction in terms of the story. I'm just trying to put material out there that I can then shape and that I can then play with and that I can then, find out if and where there might be a use for it. And even if there's not, there's still value in that discovery. And so I think that sense of like, of, of discovery and just generating ideas, generating material, generating a sense of writing yourself or dancing yourself in the direction that you want to go. That's something that I found in both.
I love it. Thanks. That felt like part of the promise of this how-to episode is some of that kind of specific sharing right there. I'm going to just open up, you guys. I was reading the book and was in heading to New York, and I was going to get to see Brian, and I had never had this experience before. I was reading a book, and I was going to be soon seeing the author, and so I thought, if there's stuff in here that I'm like loving, I'm going to underline it. When I see Brian, I'm going to read him a couple of these lines, and just like I looked at it again today, like this line, folks. The new gourmet grocery store with its inexplicable lavender yogurts and blueberry beers, right? I mean, just like that, just like conjures up a feeling we've all had when we see that next thing, like, who thought of that? Like the first time I heard of oat milk, which, is quite a while now, right? And then the marching. So this is, you guys, Brian's describing a parade in this small town. I'll have you tell you more about the book in a second. The marching band attempts a jazzy orchestration of a pop song, while a flatbed carrying the social justice farmers hiccups over a speed bump. I mean, this is all so evocative. I love your language, and I certainly got caught up in the lyricism of it. The long sentences to the short sentences to the funny little quote to something a little more somber, which it sounds like you didn't set out to do. You let it emerge as you just wrote.
Yeah, and it was a process of refinement. I mean, the number of drafts that you go through with a novel, I think that was
Okay,
something that
tell people what they might expect.
I think that was one of the most surprising things was how much in each draft you are continuing to discover and continuing to really find your voice. I think there was a sense, even as I was entering grad school for creative writing, I think I had the misperception that the way that it comes out the first time is what you have to work with, and it must be the correct way because that is what came first. And what I learned in this process, and this is both, um, it is both one of the hardest parts of writing, but also the greatest relief and opportunity, which is that the first thing that you write is not even close to what the final product will
Really?
be, and it's not an accurate reflection of your capacity to really create and say the thing that you want to say. It's in there, and you have to go through the process of refining and refining and refining. And each time you do it, each draft that you go through, each time you share it with somebody and get feedback, each time you read it anew after taking a break from it, you're going to find things that feel not quite precise, not quite what you wanted to say. You're going to get some distance and have critical perspective on it. And you're going to continue to hone it and chip away at it. And you can make it the thing that you want it to be. And so when I wrote the very first draft of this, it was such a complete mess. And I had absolutely no aspirations of actually turning this into a novel. But it was only after my husband read it and really encouraged me to pursue it, and then I showed it to another friend who I trusted, who also encouraged me as well, that I stepped back and thought about what I wanted to accomplish with it, what I wanted this story to be about, and to offer to readers. And I wrote, I did a lot of research, and I spent almost a year writing the next draft. And then I showed it to 10 friends. And from all of their feedback, I wrote the next draft. And then I started querying agents. And it took me 2 years to get an agent. And within those 2 years, I probably wrote 3 more drafts. And then when I got an agent, it took us a year to sell the book, during which time I wrote another 2 drafts. And then when we finally sold the book and I had an actual editor, then of course we had a conversation and went through another 2 drafts. And that was an 18-month production process until it actually came out. So from the moment I first started this story to the moment that it was released in bookstores was a 6-year period during which I'm sure I had at least a dozen drafts. And the
Wow.
story remains at its core the story that I set out to tell, but even I am shocked with the like how deep I was able to dig, because um I'd never thought that the process was going to be so revealing. And I think you learn a lot as you continue to grow with the story, and you have to build that into your process. You cannot expect that the first thing you write is going to be the actual reflection, or the best version of what you want to say. But if you take the time and you have the patience and you do the work to stay with the story and to continue to refine it, you will get it there. It will arrive.
So you're taking out of my thought that, or my expectation, because having worked as a journalist and I've written one nonfiction book. Um, this isn't about editing a draft. That to me is, it's, in my experience, a set of edits leaves, maybe 60 to 80% of the thing intact with edits. Refining, which is the word you're using, and are you using that word instead of revision and rewrite?
I think they're all kind of interchangeable, but there's something about
Okay.
refinement that feels like it is like drilling down to
Yeah.
find the precision of what you want to say. And so it's
Mm.
not just choosing it, as you said, it's not editing in the sense that
Yeah.
I'm trying to make this tighter or I'm rearranging things, although that
Yeah.
of course is part of it. But it's also, what is the real heart of the story here,
Mm.
or what is the
Mm.
real what is the real motivation of this character? Is this clear? I think
Yes.
refinement, when I think about it, I think of clarity. Clarity in terms of my intention with the story, clarity in terms of the motivations of the characters, clarity in terms of, what the reader is receiving. And it is different than just editing.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so now I feel like we're burying the lead here, as they say. Let's tell everybody what the book is about, and if you, as you're doing it, think about. I would love to know from you. Did you have an itch to scratch here, or a point you wanted to make in terms of a political point or a social justice point or a message that you wanted the story to convey, as important as the story itself? But please first tell people what the book is about.
Sure. So, Town and Country revolves around a congressional race in a fictional, trendy rural district. And it's how the race upends the relationships and challenges loyalties amongst a group of gay second homeowners and a local family. And I, as I said before, I did not set out for this to be my first novel. And so I can't really say that that I had a strong itch to share a particular message, but I think what it was, my husband and I split our time between the Hudson Valley and New York City. And so the story is very much inspired by dynamics that I've observed up in the Hudson Valley. I intentionally made it a fictional town in an undefined state because it also was clear that these are dynamics found across the country. And as I've been sharing it, people in California and Michigan and North Carolina have all said, "Oh, this reminds me of, this town in my state." And so I wanted to have that available to the reader to identify the town that first comes to mind wherever they are. But this was inspired by the socio-political and economic dynamics of the Hudson Valley, and it really began as a kind of exercise in self-examination because we are part-time residents here, and we've been part-time residents here for 13 years now. That I was interested in how our neighbors might perceive us, and noticing the politics here, which is very different than New York City. This is a largely rural agricultural region and district with little pockets of trendy towns. And it's a purple district. And so this is, a classic swing district. It has gone back and forth in its representation from Democrat and Republicans. And it continues to do so for the decade plus that I've lived here. And that was fascinating because previously I'd lived in major urban centers where, that is not really the question. And so it made me think differently about how you balance your sense of the local politics in terms of who represents this place and the issues that are unique to this area, but also the value and the weight that it has on the national level. And as somebody who splits my time, how do I make that calculation? Where does my personal identity play into how I think about that choice? And also, is that fair to my neighbors who are living here full time and who are experiencing very different issues on a daily basis than I do? And so this congressional race in the book gave me, which pits a local candidate versus a newly arrived carpetbagger. It allowed me to explore those issues of what we owe our neighbors, our sense of loyalty to ourselves, to our communities, to our families as well. And so it just, even though I didn't set out to write a book about politics, the campaign and the race was it was like the springboard that helped me ask all these questions that were present in my life.
Wow, Brian. Did that piece, that the book is focused on this chronologically, this congressional race and the dynamics associated, did that exist in the first draft?
Yes, that was there from the beginning, but that was also largely strategic in a sense because the way that I started this book was during it was in November 2019. There was this program called National Novel Writing Month, which unfortunately no longer exists, but had been around for 30 years. And it was a great program where anybody who wanted to, regardless of skill or experience or aspiration, could write a novel in the month of November. And you just needed to write roughly 2,000 words a day. You had all this online support and you wrote in community. And it was just a really fun way for anybody whoever had that as a goal to just, check it off, to commit to 1 month and just do it. And I had been working as a journalist for almost a decade in New York, and I really hadn't had the opportunity since grad school to write fiction, and I was missing it. And so, in terms of scratching an itch, I found, this really small, concrete, manageable way to scratch that itch and to allow myself to return to fiction. And it felt really easy. The stakes were so low. I wasn't setting out to write a novel that I was trying to publish. I was just doing a 1 month, kind of playful, fun exercise in like writing fiction. And I decided to do this like days before it started. And so I was kind of scrambling to think about what story I wanted to tell. And I had been thinking about the issues that I just described, and some congressional races in our district that really put them into stark relief. And so I thought, well, I'll just use a congressional race as a structure because as a writing experiment, as a writing assignment, it gives you everything you need. It gives you, the skeleton, it gives you the characters, it gives you themes, it gives you a structure, you know exactly what you're building towards, and you have a sense of all the different ways that it touches people's lives. And so it was frankly just a very convenient topic to grab and to use for this, what I thought was going to be only a 1 month, a game, basically, a creative game. And 6 years later, it turned into a real thing.
A real thing published by a division of Simon & Schuster, no less. I mean, like really, like a real deal, grown up, big time book. Amazing.
Yeah.
So good. Let's step away, go get your ice cream, and I know what I want to ask you when you come back.
Great.
All right. Okay, so folks, you are probably familiar, especially if you're a fan, that we have a ice cream sponsor on the Playful Podcast, Taharka Brothers. They're a social enterprise ice cream company, employee owned, based in Baltimore, Maryland. They ship nationwide, which is how a box of 6 pints of ice cream arrived at Brian's second home, as he was just talking about, up in the Hudson Valley. And also I got some here in Southern California, where I spend most of my time. And they have been an amazing supporter. I just called them out of the blue when somebody told me about it. First of all, the ice cream is some of the best. And then the fact that they're a social enterprise, double bottom line company, just made it all the better. So now I always need to know which. You got 6 pints the other day. I wonder how many are left and which one you chose.
Well, the timing was perfect because the day that they arrived, my cousin and her family drove by. They were driving from a wedding in Boston, and they were driving home to Cleveland, and they came through the Hudson Valley, and they stopped off, and she has a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so we put out all of the flavors, and everybody tried everything, and they were all hits. I think for the kids, the cookie dough was like a massive success.
Yep.
For the adults, it was the coffee and cookies. That was a really big hit.
Yep.
I would say my favorite, the one that I chose for now, is the pistachio, which I'm a really big pistachio fan. And this is some of the best pistachio I have had. I mean, there's little chunks in it, and it's amazing.
So good. Yeah, you're right. And you probably noticed in all of them, they do not spare on the chunks and the mix-ins, and like the real pistachios in there, like really true.
Like real pistachio. Yes.
So good. Did you have the honey graham?
Oh, yes.
Did you get
Amazing.
one of those?
Yes.
Amazing. That's been like the top, I would say, unscientifically, the top favorite on the podcast. I chose Caramel Crunch, which is salted caramel ice cream with chocolate covered honeycomb toffee.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Let's get one of those.
All right. So what I asked, when we're eating ice cream, is what's the scoop on how you came to care? And when you were sharing about those early ideas and wanting to explore this dynamic that you are a part of, there's a certain kind of person, Brian, and we know a lot of them, so maybe we kind of forget that not everybody's like that. But like that could be, you could be completely inured to any of that or not thinking about any of that, just thinking about what you're doing and not really worried about how it affects anyone or what this tension dynamic and opportunity exists in the community you're a part of that the book explores. What is it about you and an early memory do you think that gave you this sort of, global citizen, bigger view about your role in both being conscious of your impact and wanting to be a good partner, citizen, community member, etc.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, sometimes it's really hard as a writer to feel like you are making an impact. It doesn't, writers aren't necessarily always included when we think about, people who are, giving back or impacting the world or creating change in a sense. But I would say for me that artists were the thing that kind of helped open my eyes to so many different experiences. And I think a lot of theater and I think a lot of the books that I read growing up, and they were the things that brought me into new worlds, that brought me into new eras, that gave me, that allowed me to see through the eyes of people who were just living completely different lives and completely different experiences and completely different perspectives on the world. And so I think that is the thing that I kind of most internalize. And I think, when I think about the writing the book and in terms of what I'm hoping to offer, I think the biggest decision that I made in terms of how to write this book was to tell it from 6 different perspectives. There's a version of the book, and that could have been from a single perspective, that could have been from a perspective that most closely mirrored what my experience was. But from the very beginning, my interest and my intention was to zoom out and to look at myself from the outside. And so then I needed to find characters whose experiences were entirely different from mine. And, one of the characters is a religiously devout Christian mother who is about as far from me or anybody that I know as could be. I'm, a gay Jewish guy who grew up in Southern California in a Jewish home with an amazing Jewish mother, and so this character in the book is truly not based on anybody I know, and yet her experience and her perspective felt really necessary to be part of this story because of how representative it was of the reality of many of my neighbors, and especially when I was thinking about politics, and I wrote the major first draft of this in 2020 after that initial National Novel Writing Month kind of blip. When I decided to really pursue this and develop it, that was all during lockdown. That was all during the upheaval of 2020, the election of 2020. And so national politics was very much front of mind. And I needed a character who helped me ask the questions of how other people were seeing the same thing that I was seeing, but from a different perspective, with different beliefs, with a different upbringing, with different economic considerations, with different value systems, with different relationships with their families. And so the novel became an opportunity to enter in those perspectives, and also was a challenge to educate myself. I had to do a lot of research in order to depict this accurately. Also, as you know, one of the major themes has to do with the opioid epidemic and struggles with drug abuse, which in my district in New York is a major issue, not something that has touched me personally, but is a reality for so many of my neighbors, and would be disingenuous to ignore that. I mean, so much of this book is about examining our obliviousness. And the way that you address that is to to really pay attention to what others around you are experiencing, what they're saying, listening to that and trying to understand it. And so I kind of used my journalism and kind of gave myself a reporting task, so to speak. And I challenged myself to learn about the Presbyterian Church and the beliefs that this character might have received, the character who is experiencing challenges with drug use, to understand how that plays into his life and what the impact of that is, what that impact that would be on his family, on the region. And I educated myself about about opioid response training, and also in terms of the political aspect of it. Obviously, I have my clear, political perspective and allegiances, but I wanted to present a story that didn't judge its characters based on their political affiliation. And in order to do that, I really needed to challenge myself to think openly and generously about how people come to their political opinions. And that even included me sitting down with our former Republican congressman to get his take and his experience and his perspective on the region and its politics.
Wow. Well, I got to say, you said a minute ago, are writers or novelists, considered to be kind of part of the movement, or and what's that role they play? Everything you just shared about your process and what mattered to you and how you then did it is resonant with what I've, over this now, 3 years that I've been doing the podcast, 200 interviews, Brian, this has turned into, in a way, a journalistic endeavor. I've interviewed over 200 people about how they use joy, play, and love to sustain themselves and to do this work, and how they are in this moment, especially, which, the life of this podcast has, over this last 3 years, coincided with a lot of really challenging things, especially in the social sector. What people have called others to do and what people have been proud of that they have done. This being able to get in the, walk in someone else's shoes, to be imaginative, to be able to conjure up something different than exists currently today, to be able to have a vibrant civic life and the importance of that. Like what matters to your neighbors. I think it was Dale Anglin from Press Forward, which focuses on local news. Like if you're working with your neighbors on like a project to like get a crosswalk at the street, up the street, or a dog park or something like that, it doesn't really matter what their other political persuasions are. When you're working on that together, this idea that when things come together at the local street by street level, and your book explores that, I think this book absolutely, plays a beautiful role in kind of the change that is afoot, and the healing that is taking place. And so thank you. I wanted to mention this. There was that one story really caught my eye, dog-eared the page, about that, the bridges. So I think those of us who haven't spent a lot of time up in the Northeast, the Hudson Valley, can picture, though, from TV and movies, like these stone bridges, these old stone bridges that go across certain expressways, highways, roads. And there's a comment that they were designed so the buses, they were low enough that buses couldn't pass under them, and commentary about how that kept out people that had to rely on mass transit, which were probably poor people and potentially also people of color at that time in that region. Was that something you stumbled upon as a fact along
Yes.
the way, and like, I want to find a place to put that in the book?
Yes, it was, and it was so illuminating for me, because one of the projects of the book was also the way that we romanticize places and regions, and the Hudson Valley in particular is so romanticized in terms of the way that people think of it, and what they what it means in their minds, which is usually great food and maybe a cultural corridor. You think the farm to table, you think, apple picking, you think all these wonderful things. And so I was interested in both celebrating that, but also puncturing the bubble of that. And the goal is to just see more clearly what this place is and what it has meant and how it developed, and to be aware of that. So that, again, this question of what are our blind spots, where are we oblivious, and where are we kind of willfully ignorant, and when do we open our eyes to learn the history, to look around us, to better understand with clarity what this place looks like and what our role in it is, and then the decision that you make is very much up to you. This is not prescriptive in terms of this is how you should vote or should be your priority. That is a very individual thing, and ultimately that's, this book lands in a place where it actually focuses on the personal relationship and the emotions of voting. Each of these characters make their decisions based on very, very personal and emotional reasons. And so there's no overarching argument that I'm trying to make that's right for each character or each reader. But it is about challenging people to look around and to be present where they are, to participate, as you were just referencing, this idea of like showing up in your community, and whether that just be attending a parade and being visible and being present and showing people that you want to be a part of this community. Those small things make a difference, and they are part of strengthening communities, which hopefully then lead us down a path to healthier civic politics.
Yeah, absolutely, man, oh man. I just don't even want to stop talking, but we're coming up to the end. You mentioned about November and the novel writing. Now, people still do it. The structure isn't there online like it used to be for the novel writing in November, right? But little cells of activity are still happening. So if someone's interested in that, is there anything they can look up?
That's a good question. I'm not aware of a kind of an organized effort right now that has replicated what that is. I can try and do some research, and we can try and find something to put in the show notes. But the concept of just setting aside a really short, finite period to give yourself permission to just unleash whatever creative writing you want to do, and just say, my goal for this 1 month is to write 2,000 words a day or 1,000 words a day. And at the end of it, you're going to have 30 to 50,000 words, which is absolutely a short, it's a short novella, but you're going to get to tell the story that you want to tell, and you're going to have something to show for it. And you will have discovered something in that process that I'm sure would surprise and delight you.
Love it. And if anybody wants to, because sometimes it's just about telling somebody else you're doing it. So if anybody wants to, when the podcast comes out and you want to put in, when we post it on social media, you want to say, I'm going to do November, we will congratulate you and support you in that. Brian, when this episode comes out, your paperback will have just released. So where can people find Town and Country?
Hopefully it is in your local
Everywhere.
independent bookstore. And if you can't find it there, then the recommendation is to go to bookshop.org, which is the website where that supports independent booksellers. You can even designate your local bookstore to receive a percentage of the sales. And so you can find it there. And it also is available as an audiobook. And actually, my fellow UCSD grad, Daniel K. Isaac, who is a wonderful actor and writer. He's been on Billions. He's on Elsbeth. He's a very good friend, and he read an earlier draft and was incredibly supportive. And I asked him to read the audiobook, and he did an amazing job. So if you love audiobooks, that's also a great way to read it.
Fantastic. Yeah, double click on bookshop.org. That's the link we always use for all the books for the authors that have been on. And it's a great place to get your books and support your local booksellers. Okay, Brian, I am excited, and I know people always ask first-time novelists, when's their next book coming out? So I'm not going to ask you that unless you want to say anything about that, because I think it sounds like your process will be when it's meant to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that I am embarking on that journey right now, and I am rediscovering everything anew, and it's a completely different process than it was last time. It's as scary as it was before, but having this conversation is a reminder to myself that it is going to be a process of refinement, and I'm not there yet. My job right now is to play and to generate the material and to find what the story is and who these characters are and what I want to say with it. And that is something that I'm going to unearth draft after draft after draft, and it'll take as long as it needs to take.
It's perfect. Well, we're going to be cheering you on. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the long friendship. And I'm just looking forward to hear what's next.
Thank you so much. It's been such a joy.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the Playful Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know of a leader or organization that's doing good in the world and you'd love to help us help them amplify their message, I would love to have them on the show. Go to the show notes and click there, or go to impactfulinc.com/contact. And that's impactful with 2 L's, inc.com/contact. And let us know who you're thinking about. Can't wait to see you next time.